I just wanted to ask, so what values do you hold about learning or teaching in the classroom?
Um, I I basically pulled from my past, and I wanted to. I thought about what it is that I like from the teachers that really inspired me, and try and put that into my classes.
Great.
And the main characteristic that each teacher that I really enjoyed was they had an element of freedom and creativity in how they approached education. So I'd say that I also like to have that same uh, function in my when I lesson plan and when I have my classes to give the students uh, a little bit more freedom and leeway into how they go about doing something. So an example of this is I had a middle school class, and I wanted to bring back English projects to the class. So similar to how science projects were for me and you probably when you were in high school if you're in America. So I want to do that with English. So I gave them uh, a concept. They had to create a safety awareness thing. I didn't want to say brochure. I didn't want to say it had to be a video. I didn't want to say anything like that. But it had to educate uh, each other on fire safety. So I gave them a few things from the grammar exercise we were doing prior, but in terms of implementing them and presenting them to us, I allowed that to be however it is they wanted to do it. That was funny because they were like, "Wait, how do we? What does it have to be paper? Does it have to be, like you have? It can be, but you can do whatever it is that you want." So
Giving
after
them
that,
full creativity, full
absolutely,
ability to, that kind of scared them a little bit,
it
right?
really scared them. Yeah, but after the first conversation we had about it, we dedicated an entire class to talking about the project and talking about uh, creativity and freedom. And the next day, they brought me their ideas and what they were thinking about, what they thought about overnight, and the ideas that they had. When I talked to them each individually, they had really different ideas, and each one amazing. So by the end of the project time, I gave them about a month or so to do it. It was quite a big undertaking. They don't often have English projects. They have like their homework that they do, and the lesson that they have to get down. Then they go move on to the next thing, then test or quiz. So an English project was different. I decided I would do this instead of a test, just to see how they would like it. So they thought it would be easier to do it instead of a test, but it was actually quite difficult. But they, I had one student create a 3D model of fire safety. He had like a helicopter. One student had a 3D model with paper with like a big board, and he was able to move the helicopter through the back and then have little water, like a cardboard water thing, cover the fire. Like it was really, really cool. I would have never thought to do that. Another
So they
student
just
actually,
went all, some kids just went above and beyond because of
exactly.
the ability that you gave them to
Yeah,
be free.
they
Yeah,
have they had these interests in their lives, and what they did was they took their interest and melded it with my English project, and it really came out. I mean, that kid likes to build things with his hands. So the project, when he realized that he could do that, he went all out, and he made this awesome contraption to simulate helicopters, taking care of an open flame of a brush fire. Another kid actually created a 3D model on the computer. I had to bring in my laptop for him to show us this creation on the computer. Him and his dad put it together, and it was amazing. I mean, the fact probably his father is like a graphic designer, but the idea to have a 3D version of this exercise was it's amazing. I would have never thought to do that either. Another kid had a brochure. Another kid had a fireman that he knew give a lecture on the what do I say, the iPhone. He recorded it, and then he would translate it in English. And it wasn't,
wow.
but his English is not perfect. I mean, these are all middle school kids. They're all intermediate level English speakers. But he would.
And this is in Washington.
No, this is in Korea.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah, this is in Korea. This is why it was so different having to do this type of work there because they never had to do something like that before.
Of course. You
Um,
were the creator. You're the creator, not the. I'm sorry. You were the enabler, not the restrictor
Not at
teaching.
all. I
That's why.
never had a restriction. I never had that.
That's a wonderful kind of philosophy that you hold about maximizing student achievement. Last question I have for you, Omar, and it is, what is something you've learned about teaching from a real world experience?
All right. While I was in Korea, I had this. I was teaching a class where there was four kids. It was three girls and one boy. This particular boy was screaming all the time. He was lashing out. He was uh, being just. It was impossible to do anything in the class because he would interrupt in every language that he knew. He knew English. He knew a bit of English. He learned English. He knew Korean, and he knew Japanese. So he would always be screaming and yelling and throwing things and hurting the other students. He was. I would characterize him as having some form of ADD or ADHD. But um, I started out. I thought just to do with at that school they had a disciplinary guideline. It was like you get three smileys, frowny faces, and you have they call it parents or something. I talked to the teachers. He's worse with the Korean teachers, but they just sit and deal with it. They talk to the parents, but the parents don't care. And I was really frustrated because the other three girls were not functioning well in the class because they couldn't get material because he would be loud and disruptive all the time. So I asked my employer if it's possible, can we give him a private class so that I can work with him one on one, so that maybe I can save the three girls so that they won't have such a negative experience in the Hagwon. Then I can also help him work through whatever he needs. And if he has to lash out, he's only going to lash out at me. He won't have the audience that he's used to. So my boss said no, because his parents didn't want to pay for him to have the private class with me. And we worded it so the parents would be very happy. He's been selected to get this private class with Omar. So what I did was I paid for it myself, and I gave him the private class. And the first day of class, uh, I I wanted to see what happens if I take out my eye machine. It was the iTouch, and I wanted to see what he would do because I always know all the Korean students have iPhones in my class, so I figured why not see how he gets this reaction from this phone in the private class. So I took it out, and he was silent. He was looking at the phone, and he's like, "Teacher, do you have Angry Birds?" I'm like, "Yeah, I have Angry Birds." He's like, and then he started telling me about,
We all know Angry Birds.
huh? Excuse me?
We all know Angry Birds.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
He started telling me about uh, Angry Birds and how he gets this level, he has this level, he knows all the tricks, And I just had it because of friends of mine like Angry Birds, so I never actually played it. But
So what
so
exactly did you learn from this, Omar?
I'm getting to that. So what I did was I would look for podcasts. There's this English podcast that they used and that I used, and I wish I remember the name. But I used that in tandem with the lessons that I would have,
Wow.
and he would be quiet, and he'd get it, and he'd get the material, and he was probably the most well behaved I'd ever experienced. Um, and we did it for about a month, and everyone could see he was completely different. In my class, he was different, and then that transitioned over to the Korean class because he
So
has
then he eventually then he came back.
excuse me.
You kind of reintroduced him to the classroom after this.
Yes.
Wow, and you paid for it yourself. That
I
is
paid for myself the first month, and then when I put him back in the class, he was not nearly as
wow.
he had an audience, so he wasn't perfect, but he was completely different than the way he was before. And I used the iMachine for my other classes as well. He was a very bright kid, so he's actually I think he was far beyond the level that he was actually in. So but it was remarkable to see because you couldn't see through the disruptive nature. You couldn't see how intelligent he was until I sat him down one on one. So I learned that oftentimes you can sort of see this kid he needs this type of situation. He's this type of thinker. oftentimes you see another kid who's this type of thinker, you got to approach it this way. Um, but when you have those bad kids that are just completely like frustrating to you, you have to go far above and beyond what you would normally do to reach them.
And
And
to
then to
discover
discover,
what their issues.
yeah,
Wonderful.
and then that way you not only get them involved in your class and get them to be engaged in your class and be all. It's almost like he became a leader because he was always the first to answer. He was always the first to finish, and he was always doing very well when he started to behave. Other students, as competitive as they are, were also trying to be better than him. So he raised the level of the class when he changed his behavior. And
That's
I
fantastic.
think that, I mean that's I don't know, I don't think all bad kids are like that. But that experience told me that I want to assume that all bad kids can also be like that.
Well,
So
thank you so much for your time and thank you for your answers. That sounds like a wonderful experience. That was Omar and his complete teaching values video talk. Thank you so much for your time, Omar.
thank you very much.
All right. Bye bye.